Yo, it's your boy MVP with Juxtaposed. Do you ever hold your feelings back when interacting with someone? Your deepest thoughts? Do you ever get the case of cat's got your tongue? Well, we're going to talk about it today. Stay in tune.
What's up? How's it going? How's everybody doing? We're here with another episode of Juxtaposed. I have my co-host MVP,
Whoop, whoop.
a friend to the podcast who's pretty much here a lot of times. So I mean, it's like he's our unofficial third member of this crew here. Aaron from Pour Over Finance and Crowd Reviews. Today, as MVP wonderfully summed up, we're going to talk about people keeping their voice from the world. And that makes it sound so dramatic when I say it like that, but it's that place where you always have that thought where it's like, maybe I should have said this, or I feel like I'm not going to say something. We're going to talk about like why that happens or why we think that happens. So, tagging it over, MVP, you got this.
I'm going to say, fix my lips to say something. So let me tell you a story. Everybody sit down and get in tune, right? So for me, growing up, I had one of those confidence issues where I didn't want to come off like I'm stupid, right? Some people call Dumbo. Some people call foolery, foolish, fool. I didn't want to come off like, and mind you, in the midst of it, I wasn't thinking that, but as I reanalyze or analyze my past behaviors, because you always got to check in with yourself, right? Like every couple years, you got to be like, yo, how was you moving, MVP? Oh, nah, you wasn't moving that well. So I was like, yo, why is it when I'm in these groups, especially when it was sports, right? Especially when it was music, right? Because then you got to allow people in to your preferences, right? You got to like, yo, I'm over here listening to Candy Rain. People are like, man, that's soft stuff. Put on some Tupac, right? And I'm like, well, let me not interact with this conversation because I don't want anybody to think I'm a square, right? So as I'm growing up, I'm like, yo, why is that? Like, why am I being, like, why do I care? Two, if these are supposed to be my peoples, you should be like your friends, colleagues, or whatever, people who are close to you, family, you should be able to express yourself. And it goes a little bit deeper than that, but I wanted to start off there and get y'all input.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the core this comes down to like our need to fit in, right? Like we're
Okay.
a social, interactions is a big part of who we are as human beings. Is that you don't want to ever be kicked out of the fold or not be a part of the pack, but at the end of the day, like as you get older, you realize, well, I don't really care. I'm gonna do my thing. That's my thoughts. I mean, it is something I know I kind of dealt with while I was younger. And it's weird because I felt like what I was actually like a real in my younger days, the youth K style. I said whatever I wanted to say, and it got me in trouble a lot of times. And then that kind of corrected what was acceptable and what wasn't, right? And then you end up dealing with that way into your older age because you're like, well, in the past when I did this, I got in trouble for it. So is this something I'm not supposed to do? And that's an environment thing. But what's your thoughts, Aaron? I feel like I've heard my voice a lot.
I'm listening to you, and it's funny as you're speaking. I'm having like visual flashbacks of my life, and it's like it was actually the opposite for me. I never felt the need to hold back my voice. I never felt the need to truncate myself. I never felt the need to not speak on what I like or dislike or anything like that. But as I got older, I started to do that more and more because I started to realize that everyone isn't built to handle information, and everyone isn't built to handle information. One, how you may deliver it, or two, the specific type of information that you're delivering. So it's funny, but that actually is something that I've come into as an adult, where I edit myself and I determine what is okay to say based on the group that I'm around. I mean, Styles knows, like, probably, I don't know, 12 years ago, maybe, I used to have some of the most inappropriate one-liners that you've ever heard from a human being. And that was just how I spoke. It was just like, I'm going to say it. I'm going to make reference to it. It's going to be funny. It might offend someone. And I constantly have to self-edit. As a matter of fact, I got married just over a month ago, actually over 2 months ago. And there was a guy there that was wearing, thank you. He was wearing a fur. And I went over to the table and I started to roast this guy. I didn't even know the dude. He came with someone else. But the fur looked like a raccoon skin. So I started going in on the dude.
Damn.
And then somewhere through the conversation, I started realizing, like, yo, people are laughing at this guy. I got to stop.
Are you big bully? Big bully Aaron coming
that's
through.
The thing. Someone could approach me and do the exact same thing. As a matter of fact, it used to happen to me a lot. Like, people, like, come on, I grew up poor, bro. Extremely poor. So, like, man... I don't want to take over the show too much here, but
express yourself.
When I was younger, because I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, I'm not from the United States. So, like you said, human beings, social, we try to find ways to fit in. One of the ways that people fit in when I was growing up in the 90s is sneakers. People wear their Jordans. People back then had like their pennies and all kinds of stuff. So I couldn't afford any of that stuff. So I was like, damn, all right. There was this commercial for these sneakers called Flack. And in the commercial, bro, for the whole summer, like, they just kept running this commercial over and over and over. And in the commercial, the dude is like, Flack, 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 Flack. I'm like, yo, everybody's going to be wearing these Flacks when we get back to school. So I went and picked myself up a pair of Flacks. They were nice. They were clean. I was like, cool. I'm going to be one of the in crowds when I get back.
Feeling yourself.
Bro,
okay.
I was on my way to music class, and some dude walking by was like, oh, Steph, he got the Flacks. And he wasn't saying it like he was impressed about it. It was like they were making fun of me, and they were pointing at it. It was like that version of like, what are those? And he's like, Flack, Flack, Flack. Yo, son, I felt like a social pariah. I wanted to cry. It was unacceptable. So, yeah. That kind of stuff used to happen to me a lot. So I used to figure.
We're gonna speed past the story. So after that happened and he said, what are those? Did you wear them bad boys again?
Bro, those Flacks stayed mint for a very long time. I don't think I wore those things again, bro. I went back and I had some beat up old Adidases from a few years ago. That's what I rocked for like the rest of the year, man. Yeah, he roasted me, bro. So I used to think that, you know, it was kind of okay, but I never really thought back to how I felt when that happened. So, you know, just speaking openly is a thing that I've always done. But as an adult, I realized that, yeah, your words can get you in a lot of trouble, especially in the I hate to say it, but the political environment that we live in today. You really have to watch yourself. So whether it be inside of a social group or at work, because, you know, work is another big situation where you have to really watch what you're saying. Over time, as an adult, I started realizing, like, hey, you got to watch what you're saying. You got to watch your words. And as a result of that, yeah, I'm not as expressive as I once used to be. But it came to me as an adult, not as a child. As a child, my family was never really the type to compress you or prevent you from, you know, saying what you wanted to say. It was always about respect.
Yeah.
Respect, definitely.
I do want to say, I think that there was a special bringing, like, I would say, like, structure that was required from people in the Caribbean, because you literally would get, I mean, I guess it's the same up here, but it was worse. You get clowned on by adults. Like, adults would roast you.
That's different. That's different.
It was just like, yo, it was like a rite of passage. Like,
is this family adults or just random adults?
It don't matter.
See, that's different. Yeah.
It didn't matter what
it's a community. We got
literally in the Caribbean is a requirement.
So that probably what led me to being in the space where I felt like I'm used to saying what I want to say.
Right.
And as I got older, it's the same. Yeah, to that point, I think kind of agree with that. Like, but then there was a switch for me. Like, I feel like, early 20s for me, I didn't say anything. So, like, to MVP point, where I didn't talk, I think you saw that a lot too, where it was like, there'll be situations where I wouldn't even talk to people, or I would have, like, one thing he used to get on me about is like, yo, go holler at that chick. And I'm like, I don't feel like it, right? Like, that would be, and it would be like, it's not like I was super afraid, but it was like, I don't really feel like putting myself out there.
Right.
Whereas now, I don't really care. I mean,
Right.
if I right now, an MVP can attest to it. Even at work, sometimes I keep the same energy, and honestly, I realize it's opened me up to a whole different quality group of people as a result, because people come to me for my opinion,
Right.
and I'm not gonna hold it back. And
Right.
9 times out of 10, I don't leave any situation where I haven't said what I felt, and I feel like that is also a blessing and a curse, because sometimes you're gonna say something and everybody's gonna be like, "Huh?" Clutch his purse.
Yeah.
No, he didn't.
Yeah. So I think that is it's a very interesting thing. My question, I guess to both of y'all is: do you think that we are in a space where, we will ever get to a space where we could get to that, where people could just speak openly and not necessarily get crazy, or feel like they have to hold themselves back because of, I don't want to get into cancel culture and everything like that. I was trying to avoid that, but like, it is what, like, kind of, it's the corrector these days. So I'll let you answer that question.
So when you say that, I think about if anyone's been on Facebook recently,
what's Facebook?
like they have this thing where they send you a memory.
Oh,
and
Okay.
it's interesting because I said, yo, as growing up, I would keep things to myself, but on Facebook, I was letting it go. Shots was ringing off, right? And I'm like,
everything.
I was like, yo, who is this young man on here? Because I don't recognize him, right? And I wouldn't post some of those things now. So we talk about cancel culture. A lot of that stuff, I definitely wouldn't post. So I think it's important to understand that you do, like, yes, express yourself, but you also want to do it with some balance and some thresholds there. I've been thinking about music lately. Like, you got to balance that threshold and release and attack. I'm sorry, I'm just master classes. So I'm like, you have to do that definitely now. Because when I looked at back then, I'm glad people weren't really, so I'm using the word sensitive.
Oh yeah. It's sensitivity.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy, because even you look to music and movies and commercials and some of the stuff that was said, you're like, yeah, how do y'all get away saying this now? You could, like, you just think of some of Biggie's lyrics, bro. Like, Biggie's probably one of the most influential artists to me. And I'm like, my man, if this had happened now, imagine the outcry. I don't even think, I think it's changed music so much. But what's your thoughts on the original question there, Aaron?
Well, that's what I was gonna ask you, actually, with you bringing up artists and such. So, in terms of us being able to speak openly, outside of just political, just in general, do you think things are trending in a good way, or do you think they're trending in a negative? Because again, political aside, just social groups, friend groups, work environment, music, movies. Do you feel like we as people are much more expressive with each other in the way that we speak, or do you think we've become a lot more constricted with how we express ourselves, how we speak to others, what we put out into the openness of the world?
I would say, from my experience, it depends on the situation. Like, in certain silos, I feel like there's places where I feel like I can express myself completely. Like, in our conversations here, it feels like I can, even though, like, sometimes we're having these conversations and it might, borderline get on the edge of what is acceptable, the idea is that this is supposed to be a safe space that, one, if someone feels something, they can correct us, and we can have a whole conversation about it. Then I think as in the masses, you don't really see that, but definitely in groups, like I think of like we have a group chat, and I think that we have some very different opinions in there, and we can have that where it doesn't feel like I'm gonna say something off the wall and they're just gonna get deleted from the chat. It's like a lot of times if there's something that I need to get educated on, at the end of it, somebody in there is going to actually correct it. So what I would love to see is if we have more of that externally, which is hopefully something we could do here at Juxtaposed as well, where it's like you could have these conversations and even talk to people from different groups, and get their point of view. So to answer your question, I think it's not necessarily publicly trending in a positive way, because it's like, most times people are just like, I don't even want to talk about XYZ because it's like I don't want to get canceled, or I don't want to have it affect me on a day-to-day. But I think there are spaces where these conversations are happening internally. It'd just be nice if we could have it on a large scale. It's like if somebody, if I'm here, and I'm talking about, MVP's hat, like it should be okay for me to say,
he got the flax. He just bought the flax.
Yeah, and then it might have been I'm going super ridiculous with this, but like it might have been a religious thing. He doesn't, he has to cover his head. I don't know, but he should be able to say, hey, nah, bro, I do this for this, and I'll be like, oh, this joke ain't as funny anymore, without it being to the point where fisticuffs. Like it shouldn't go that far. But
right,
that's my thought. That's what I want for the world, because we have we have way more access to information. We're way more connected at any point in history, but it feels like we're distancing ourselves from each other every day. Every time somebody says something, you're like, oh, and cancel culture is a really irritating thing for me, because I feel like it's stifling the ability to have these conversations. But
no,
yeah, and to like flip side on that one, I think everybody has an opinion now, right? Podcasting is taking over the world. So it's interesting that you asked that question, Aaron, because it's like more people are expressing themselves and giving their opinion, but also I think the consequences are larger now. If that makes sense, because especially with people who podcast, you hear the big names, and they're like, if they say anything wrong or disagree with the masses, everything's like a sheep type of mentality now, where if you're not on the same page as the masses, there's a problem. We have a problem with what you're saying. So
how do you feel about that? Because just to mention one, I'll say Joe Budden, for instance.
Who?
He used to always... Joe Budden.
I'm kidding.
He used to say whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, however he wanted. You see the dude blow off the handle and start screaming and yelling about all kinds of stuff. Now he actually has a disclaimer at the beginning of his podcast. I never expected that.
It's hitting them hard.
It's bigger money. And that's the other thing. It's like,
that's true. The money.
As you start to think about marketing, and you start to think about people putting dollars behind your product, and like this, everybody's eating. Well, people are making money from that.
Everybody's eating, huh?
Well, no, I don't want to. No controversy there. People are generating money there, and they're spending money there. So then you want to be conscious of what you say. And the sad thing about it is, the truth is, once you start doing stuff like that, people are going to, probably, call you out. Or, I mean, he was able to bounce back from the controversy, so he's doing something right.
So you know what? I'm gonna just go out there on the edge and say it's a good thing. Hear me out.
Really?
Because
okay,
what's a good thing?
Well, no, time? It's a good thing that there is some type of consequences for what you're saying.
Okay.
And what I mean by that, obviously, if you get in trouble, that sucks, right? But what I mean by that is you can't just simply do stuff. And that's one of my pet peeves. People just thinking you can do whatever you want to do, because growing up, if you did whatever you thought you wanted to do, you just thought you could say whatever to people. In my school, that would cause problems.
Yeah.
And so it creates this environment where like, yo, you have to be really good at what you do. You got to be able to say what you need to say while also keeping in mind not to just blatantly disrespect groups, ethnic groups, cultures, whoever, right?
Okay.
I think that is important because, for example, I get tired of people putting out trash music. I'm like, yo, you didn't put no effort into this music. I think in the culture, we need to start holding people accountable. Like, hey, you need to stop putting out this track. Like, I can tell, like, especially if you listen to music like that, and you in the weeds, you can tell if someone actually put thought or they just was trying to just put music out. No, you can't just be on your podcast talking crazy, right? You can make your jokes, but now you got to be a little bit more creative. Now you got to like one thing with some podcasts is like they do things to get viral, right?
Right.
But some of those things will get them in hot water. So it's like, yo, I challenge you. How about you go viral without disrespecting anybody? Keeping it positive. I challenge you to do that.
It's a tough one.
Hello? Who I'm talking to? What's up?
It's definitely a tough one because when you say, without disrespecting or insulting, it's so fleeting because what might be considered disrespectful to you might not be considered disrespectful to me. What might be considered insulting to me might not be insulting to you. So how do you have conversations with anyone, whether it be in a private or public space, without making things so uninteresting and boring? Because all you're doing is editing yourself and making sure that you don't offend anyone. I mean, I'm sure you guys heard about the whole, it happened to both Lizzo and Beyonce.
Yep.
They used the word spaz in their music. Who was aware of the fact that there are people out there that take spaz as an offensive term? I wasn't aware of that. I was not aware of that at all. So now, how aware are you supposed to be of who offends what in what group before it just becomes boring? Like, I literally don't want to hear anything that you have to say because you're so edited. You're so unwilling to say something that might hurt someone's feelings that you're actually just boring. How do you walk that line? Because it might be disrespectful to someone, just like with Lizzo and Beyonce using the word spaz.
And it's not a response to the whole thing, but one thing I had to do growing up is not curse around my parents, right? But still say how I feel. So, sorry, not sorry, you're going to have to figure it out, Brody. You know what I'm saying? Like,
who's going to have to figure it out? The
whoever that
being
person
offended
is.
Or the person
No,
speaking?
the person like, yo, if I know spaz is an issue now, right?
Right.
Even if I don't agree, you have to make that decision within yourself how you going to move. You going to take spaz out the vocabulary, or you going to now, when you're in different groups, move differently? Like, this group, I'm not going to say spaz. It's even when you say, like, the N-word. It applies to everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain ways you talk to, like, the way I talk to K Styles may be different than the way I talk to you, Aaron. Right?
So I'm going to challenge what you're saying. I'm going to let you finish your thought.
I got something too. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Rock off. Let's get it.
You want to go ahead, Styles?
Yeah. You go first.
All right. So you said you're going to have to watch how you speak depending on the group that you're in.
Right.
Let's say I'm a white person.
Okay.
I know the N-word offends black people, so I'm not going to drop it to them. Can I, around my white friends, just be like going crazy with the N-word? Because I know it's not going to offend them because, I don't know. Maybe they're the type that speaks like that. But then when I'm publicly speaking or when I'm speaking to people of color or if I'm on the internet, I'm like, nope, can't say that word. But then all those doors close and I'm going crazy.
My response to that is you better check yourself because what's going to happen is it's like lying. You got to keep up with the lie. Why don't you just have that character where you just don't say the N-word? And so you don't have to worry about in that specific situation, like, sometimes I got to say it, sometimes I don't. But for the word spaz, I'm like, if that's what you want to do, just know it comes with consequences that people are going to be offended, right? So why don't you just take it out of your vocabulary? Like, I don't care about the word spaz enough to be like, hey, I need to keep this in my vocabulary. I don't care about the word spaz.
Well,
I can use a different word.
So I want to double down on where do you draw the line, but my question is, where is these rules kept? Where are the rules kept? Because for me, spaz is something we have said in hip hop. It's something we said in Black culture for a while to mean a bunch of different things, right? It's a little bit on the end of the cool spectrum. It's like the bomb, diggity, or, like, it's like stuff like that we don't necessarily say anymore. But for me, growing up in New York, I heard that word multiple times. So it's a part of my vocabulary. At no point did I get the official memo that said, spaz is off. Spaz means something else, that you should never use. It's like the R word, right? Like, that's a word that's been around, and people know what it means. And honestly, I feel like my feelings to that word is that you should never use that word to describe a person ever. But there are situations that you probably can use it because it should never be used for a person. But at the end of the day, that's my feelings to it. My concern now is that we have a society that literally don't spend the time to, or don't use the opportunity to talk about it. Instead, they want to demonize you for it. The Lizzo thing, listen, you can say what you want about Lizzo. I think she handled that with a lot of respect, because she said, oh, you know what? I'm going to re-release the song. Make sure that this word's not in there. And then the response from the people was, oh, she should have known not to use this word anyway. And I'm like, yo, wait.
I have an issue with that. Yeah.
Wait
that
a minute.
part, that's what I have an issue with. Like,
and it's like, but I mean, realistically, look at that. We started this conversation alone. We didn't know that word was an issue.
Right.
So listen, MVP might become a negative word. Then you're not going to use your name? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what do you do? Where's the line?
That's my thing. Where is the line? And at what point do you just say, you know what? Forget it, man. Because at what point are you going to just allow your voice to be handicapped? Where every time you say something that is just to you normal speech, someone is taking offense to it before you're like, you know what? Forget this. There's actually, are you guys aware of Jenna Marbles?
Mm-hmm.
No.
She was a YouTube.
Exactly. Okay. She was one of the original, like, people on YouTube who blew up. Like, when hitting 1 million subscribers was like something that was unheard of. She was one of those people.
Okay.
And she had videos because, as you mentioned, MVP, there was a point where you were on Facebook just going crazy. And you can't do that today because it's a wrap for you if you do that. So Indeed. She was the type of person that was doing videos that might not have been considered the most respectful of everyone, but it was in the name of comedy. Here we are, all these years later, people went and dug up stuff from her archives, like we're talking a decade old, and they used that material to cancel her to the point where she apologized twice. And after 2 apologies, I guess it was just too much to deal with that she eventually just said, I don't know if I'm ever going to be back, but after this video, I'm not uploading to YouTube anymore. Completely disappeared off the face of the earth. That is unacceptable, man. Just because you might have offended 1 or 2 people making some jokes or something. I don't know if I agree with the idea of once I know it offends someone, I'm going to stop doing it. The next thing you do offend someone, you're going to stop doing that. And then at what point do you even have the ability to have freedom of expression? Because everything you say and do, someone takes offense to it. Now you're the equivalent of a mouse. You're not even able to speak or say anything because apparently everything you say and do is offensive to someone. And every time you say or do something, cancel culture comes for you. And forget cancel culture, just in general, society wants to remove you.
And so I say to that, it's on the, yo, you got a brain. Use it. You decide what you're going to allow to like push back on. Cause like my thing is, and I tell Styles about this all the time, I pick my battles. I'm not gonna fight for Eric. Like, that's why I respect Lizzo. She's like, Spaz, okay, bro, oh, you got it. But if it's something that I'm real passionate about, oh, now MVP's in your face. And I don't care what you're talking about. And then I'll replay this Juxtaposed episode and see that he kept the same energy, bro. Like, I respect you, but when it's something I feel passionate about, you better be able to hear me too. Simple as that.
Yeah, my biggest thing is
that's where you draw the line at.
I feel like we really need to get to a point where we can have these conversations. Because if there's stuff that is offensive to other people, maybe educate me as to why this is a thing, right? Like,
for sure.
Educate me as to, and I think, man, I've said it so many times on here. Don't just cancel. Tell us why this is not a thing. Like, because there's things about our culture that have been taken and bastardized, and there's so many things that we can literally point to that started from hip hop or started from Black culture and that ended up somewhere else, and it's not what we started, but we don't go out and say, oh, we need to get rid of this person for that. And I'm not saying it as a race component to this. I'm just saying that it is that we have this super, this agenda to go against anything that we don't agree with. And I think it only works to separate us further. And we miss out on the opportunity to learn things that could actually benefit us as a whole. So,
yeah, you might have offended bastards, by the way.
Oh,
you said bastardized.
Oh,
hey,
I was like, wait, what?
You better check your language, Styles.
No, but
there's a lot of bastards out here.
Listen. At the end of the day, bro, if you feel a way, let's have a conversation.
Let's have and I can get behind that. That makes sense to me. Let's have the conversation.
But now, let's say you have the conversation. What do you expect to be the outcome every time there is a conversation? Do you expect the individual that is being spoken to then express changed behavior? Is there supposed to be some sort of a common ground found? How much do you allow everything and everyone around you to dictate who you are as a person?
Well, it's not necessarily about dictating. I think it is about, creating that space where you can at least empathize, right? And understand people's struggles. Like to use one that I think hits home for me is I look at it how people have addressed issues with the police, right? And that being like a big thing, it's an issue that amongst minorities and primarily Black people have felt strongly and said stuff about it. Nobody, there was an expectation of, oh, here he goes again playing the race card, right? No one stopped to say, hey, maybe there is something happening here. Then we have like George Floyd happen, and everybody's like, oh, can you believe this is happening? And then everybody's asking me, and I'm like, we've been saying this for a while, but the fact that you never took it seriously or even listened to what we were talking about is the problem. So I'm not saying that we need to get to this point where every time something happens, we go, kumbaya, we're on the same page, right? Like, I don't think that's supposed to happen. I do want people to at least say, hey, this is a real thing that's happening, right? And I remember, not to go into the political thing too deep, but I remember when the riots in Charlottesville happened, and they bought out all Home Depot's tiki torches, and they were walking through the streets with all the citronella burning. Sorry, I'm kind of clowning that a little bit, but the thing that the thing they were chanting is, oh, we don't want them to replace us, blah blah blah. And I said to somebody who was a white guy, I was like, I can understand what they're saying. And he's like, how could you understand that? It goes against everything. Da, da, da. I'm like, because they're saying they want to be represented and they don't want people to replace who they are. And I'm like, honestly, if you get down to the core of it, it's what we've been saying for a long time. We want representation. We want to be treated as equals. Now, granted, I do feel like there was some spaces where they may be taking a little liberties with what they think is being replaced. But at the end of the day, you can understand where they're coming from, right? And I learned this a long time ago where I remember when I lived in Maryland the first time, we lived in a very different area, and one of our neighbors was an ex Ku Klux Klan member, right? And
Okay.
talking to this guy, he had found Jesus. He was a different guy, right? But you could see every now and again, he had a couple.
Yeah, some tendencies.
His responses to things may come off the wrong way, but then this man clearly, I mean, he grew up in an era where he was about that action, right? And on the surface, one would say, oh, he's ex Ku Klux Klan, I'm not going to talk to him. He was a nice guy generally, but he was trying to change the way he addressed life, right? And if you went on the fact that he was an ex Ku Klux Klan member, you could immediately say, oh, I don't like this guy. I'm not going to talk to him. Every time I see him, he going to get the mean mug for me. And we don't get that space to have the conversation. And literally, it could have been a little conversation of, well, you know what this means to us as Black people, that could have changed this man's point of view. So I say all this to end my long diatribe, we have to have these conversations, because at the end of the day, the alternative is we literally either don't speak to each other, or we end up in a siloed place where everybody hates each other, and we go about our lives living a very not whitewashed, but I don't mean race whitewashed. I mean whitewashed.
What type of white are you talking, Styles?
I give up.
Yeah, see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So, I got a question for you. You said that this guy, you would see him struggling and things like that. Like, you'd be watching the news and it would be like Black people doing something. He's like clenching his teeth. Like,
no.
Like, wasn't that kind of struggling?
Black people.
I wasn't going
Black
over
people
to
things again.
wasn't going over to his house for dinner. But like in conversations, you would realize that he would be doing some of the same censoring that we're even doing in this conversation. Right, but you could see it happening on his face because he may have been used to firing the N-word off and getting really,
That's
I'm not
what
going to do
saying.
that right now.
Like in my head, you guys ever watched the Boondocks?
For sure.
You ever saw the episode talking about an end moment?
Oh, yes.
I'm just seeing him as like just trying his hardest, but then he's like, that's
he blurts it out.
Like he's just struggling to hold it back.
Oh,
I don't.
You made me think Anchorman, Ron Burgundy. He was like black, black, and he was talking to Megan the Good.
Yeah,
he just couldn't.
I don't think it was ever that extreme.
Okay.
I do
I
think
mean,
that
he was Ku Klux Klan. That's pretty extreme. So,
but I don't think in the day-to-day his interactions ever came up. But you could, as a young person, I could observe that there was some pause in how he put his words together.
I got you.
You better learn how to pause.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you definitely do have to learn how to pause. But one aspect of the whole conversation that I think is being left out when it comes to watching what you're saying and not disrespecting people and, not being so ready to offend people and having the conversations and all of that. One aspect that we're leaving out here, which is the aspect that me personally, I find myself aligning more with, is stop being so goddamn sensitive about everything. That's how I feel about it. I feel like the world has gotten way too sensitive about everything, and everyone just needs to calm down a little bit, because when it's all said and done, no one's gonna know explicitly what is offensive to everyone, who's gonna take it a certain way, but you do have control on how you react to things that are being said. Like Styles was saying, yeah, you might want to have the conversation with someone, but rather than taking offense to it, kind of gear yourself towards that. Stop taking everything as if someone is out to get you. Stop taking everything as if it is offensive. Try to grow a little bit of a thicker skin. My thing is, when it comes to just in general, be it friends, family, social circles, on the internet, whatever the case is, as long as I'm not saying anything that is inciting violence, that's going to result in riot type behavior, that type of thing, go ahead, have the conversation. Now, you can't, it's not going to cause a riot if someone just comes out and calls somebody fat, for instance, but there's ways of being able to have that kind of conversation without, I guess, causing people to take offense to it, but at the same accord, someone might take offense, and People just have to stop being so sensitive about things. If someone says something about fat people and you're taking offense to it, maybe there's an insecurity within you that you need to address rather than take offense. Maybe you are fat. Maybe you do need to address your health. Maybe you need to look at that situation rather than like getting upset because someone said something about quote unquote fat people. Because, we have that whole fat acceptance movement now. So if you say something like that, you're being bigoted towards fat people. So I really
When
just think that the world has become way too sensitive.
when are they gonna have the short guy movement? Where
See, but it's
stop
okay
shaming
to
short
offend men,
guys.
though. That's the thing. Like, it's okay to
Oh,
call a guy
never mind.
fat. It's okay to, make insulting remarks towards a short guy, but do the same thing to maybe a female, and you're done for. There's a
You're out of here, buddy.
and I wish I had the video because I didn't know that the conversation would go in this direction. But
Mhm.
there's a video that I saw online where they were showing it was a runway of plus size models, and
Okay.
every single plus size model that came out was a woman. The minute that a dude
Oh, I
came
did
out, guess what? It was a dude in good shape. So it's like it was almost
Huh.
speaking towards how acceptable it is
Interesting.
for women to, kind of be plus size. But then when it's a guy, dad bod, this, that, and the other, and you just got to eat that. You can't say anything about it because then the world is going to get down on you for your sensitivity.
Yeah. I do have one question to you, and I don't know if it's necessarily something you're gonna 100% have the answer to. But my question is, what do you think was the thing that changed, that made the world so sensitive?
Social media.
For sure. Too much
Social
access, bro.
media.
I can see everything.
The what do they call it? The vocal minority. I think that's really what it
Mm.
is. You have a group of people who are in the minority, but they are the vocal ones. I have a coworker that said it once to me. He was like, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So that's what's happening. Those people are very vocal, even though they are within the minority. And as a result, they're going to get results because everyone else is kind of just choosing to be passive about these things.
That's a good
And
point.
and nobody, I think, I mean, some people, a lot of people, I feel like don't want to come off like they're a jerk, right? Just generally nice people, like people who are just cool and like
Right.
want
They
to
got
take care
real
of their
things to deal
family.
with.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, yo, I can tell, I can see people like being sensitive in a way of like, hey, I don't want people to take my character out of, who I really am.
Right.
And so there's two parts to it. They could tackle it like, hey, let me just make sure I move correctly. Or they can be like, hey, let me make sure other people move correctly. And then that's where you get that single-minded, we're all, trying to
Groupthink.
be on the same thought pattern. And it's like, I don't think it should be like that. Because my thing is, because I wanted to address what Aaron was talking about with the whole people being sensitive. I was taught you really can't control what other people do. You can only control yourself and what you do.
Correct.
So it's a tough question to be like, can we stop people from being sensitive? And I'm like, if you have the platform to help with that, cool. But I also think you need to be able to make sure that you're moving accordingly and you're not that sensitive yourself about everything, right? Which I feel like that's basically what you're
Right.
saying. But I'm
Yeah.
just saying it's hard for me to be like, hey, I'm gonna come to you and be like, hey, you're not being sensitive enough. You don't have enough empathy, especially if I don't even know you.
Right.
Which I think a lot of people do because of social media. They tell a lot of other people what to do and how to move, and you don't even know them.
Right. That is true.
I think this, to your point, I feel like social media I spent a lot of time highlighting the extreme. And so everyone in the middle is forced to operate within these extremes. So you have the I would say like the Ben Shapiro's of the world, because we just saw a clip with him, and I'm like, some of his points may be valid, but it's like, what? Or the Candace Owens, right? And then you have people who are like the complete opposite, and you're like, well, where do I land? Like, I just want to have an opinion. Or it's like even when you have an opinion that goes against like, what everybody else thinks, it's You don't want to say that. You don't want to do that. It's weird, man. It's weird.
So piggybacking off of that, I wanted to bring it a little bit closer home, right? Because this is kind of like social media externally, right?
Yeah.
But I'm a real big like group chat, the group. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on in the group? So my question to y'all is, I know there's situations where you don't want to hurt your friend's feelings. Hey, yo, give me some input on this thing I'm working on, whether it's making videos, music, and you're like, you don't let your voice like help your friend because you don't want to hurt them. So you're like, hey, that's good, bruh. That's great. But in your mind, you're like, yeah, you need to work on your lyrics. You need to work on the quality. And I know that's a real thing where people will not express that to their friends because they don't want to come off as a hater. That's a big thing nowadays. They don't want to hurt their friends' feelings and stuff like that. I want to get into that bag of like, how do you approach that in a sincere way instead of just holding your voice?
I'm gonna put my quick input there and then pass it off to Aaron. Don't come ask me if you're expecting a fluffy answer. Well, especially when it comes from music or anything I care passionately about. Don't come to me with expecting no fluffy answer because I'm not gonna give it to you. You know that if you could go to probably somebody else and get that, but if you come to me, I'm gonna tell you my opinion, and it doesn't mean that I am the most well-versed person or I know everything about it, but I'm gonna give my opinion, and honestly, I think that goes back to what I said earlier about leaving every situation pretty much saying what I have on, I don't ever have a moment where I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should have, said this completely different. And maybe I should have added this point. Mm-hmm. But like, I'm going to tell you what I think, and you either you run with that or you don't.
No, I definitely, I understand what you mean with that, because when it comes to what you were mentioning specifically, we're talking about artistic expression. Mm-hmm. So that's a tough one because it's hard to express what you might truly be feeling without the other person taking some level of offense, because it is something a little bit nearer and dearer to their heart, So
right.
There is going to be a way to deliver that information without being, I guess, quote unquote, mean about it. But if it's truly someone that's a friend, then they should understand, if you're going to go to this person to get feedback, don't go to this person expecting feedback in the manner in which you want that feedback. If you want their feedback, then you got to go expecting their version of feedback. And if you can't handle that, then you just got to keep that to yourself and just rock with it. It's probably one of the reasons why, if I'm doing something that I want to do, I'm not really one to reach out and ask for opinions. I'm more of the one to create it, put it there and say, tell me what you think. And it's not me looking for like feedback so I could go change something. It's just to hear what you have to say so that I know what the world, or just someone who has the same palette as you, to understand what their palette might be leaning more towards, so that in the future, maybe I might want to change things a little bit this way or that way. But it's not like for, oh man, they really didn't like this, so I have to do something else. It's more so that I can sharpen my sword, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But so I just like going deeper, right? So I like where we're going with this, right? So let's take it off of the artistic thing, because I know the artistic view is sensitive. I mean, the word of the day, I feel like. But let's go into like family. And I'm like, hey, every time I come in the house, you got the microwave on high. Now, this might cause an issue in the household. So I don't say nothing. But every time I come in, sure enough, that microwave is going. And then I blow up. And then you're like, yo, bro, I only used the microwave like twice this year. What are you talking about? So, but it was 2 times too many, man. No, I'm being being crazy. But what I'm saying is, there's this thing I think everyone goes through, especially when it comes to family and living in the same house, or even when you think your homeboy did something wrong, and you're like, I could give him the raw deal, but it could create some waves.
Well,
how do you tackle that?
It's a tough one. And the question is it really gets down to is whatever's happening causing you discomfort to the point where it's something that's seriously bothering you, or is it something that's just like a slight annoyance? And it's important to make that distinction, because some of the things that you may care about, and actually that happens a lot of times.
Yep.
Some of the stuff you care about, other people don't care about. So it's not that big of a deal. But if it's something that you are dealing with where you have strong feelings, then the other person should at least know that. And if they continue on after you've told them, then that becomes an issue, right? Because now that's like blatant disrespect. But I think that it's definitely a challenge, and it's going to be hard. But the question is how much does it bother you? And if it bothers you a lot, at some point you got to make a decision. Like, I can't sit here and let this bother me to the point where every time I see the person now, you're like, I'm waiting. We go. One more thing, bro, and it's about to set it off.
Right. And it could be a small thing that set it off at that point.
But the thing is, I think that's worse though, because now you've created a whole scenario where this person has been doing ill to you, and it really wasn't something they were thinking about, but it's because you felt about it. I used to do that a lot when I was younger, and there's still areas where that still comes up, where you're like, oh my God, bro, I'm gonna smack fire out of this person. But the question a lot of times is you have to ask yourself how much you want to deal with it, how much does it bother you? So it is something I feel like, honestly, in a situation like that, you need to speak up. And sometimes you have to go and create the safe space for that. So you're like, hey, let's have a meeting. Let's sit down and talk about it. Let's let this be a thing that we're not going to let drag on. If there's a time to air it out, and this goes for relationships too, because listen, there might be times when, you and your significant other, there might be this one thing you might be doing that's pissing them off. Leaving the toilet seat up, doing, it could be all kind of different things, right? But if you don't have the conversation about it, you can't literally expect anything to come out of it. It's like when one of the things that it seemed to be a thing in, I would say, more heterosexual relationships, where there's an expectation that one person's supposed to read the other person's mind. If I was a mind reader, I'd be using it for something probably for good, man. I'm trying to find some stock trades or some lottery numbers or something. I'm trying to do something, but it just kind of perpetuates this lack of communication, which goes back to my original thought: is we need to know how to communicate. How have we gotten so far? We're putting people on moons. We're doing all of this stuff, and you can't talk to somebody next to you. Then we're doing something wrong, and I don't want to sound preachy, because there's times when I suck at it too. Yeah. But we need to do better as humans. And on that note, I'm out of here. Aaron, I'm not going anywhere, but
you stay right there, buddy.
Nah, it's a learning experience, and I guess what it boils down to is picking your battles and really checking yourself. And what MVP said about you having control over yourself and not having control over what others say. You really got to just check yourself. And personally, I think if you're finding yourself being way too offended about things, you might need to just kind of look in a little deeper, so to speak, about why things are offending you and why you find yourself taking so much offense to these things. And instead of flying off the handle, have conversations, check your own sensitivity, and see where that goes. I think if that kind of stuff is happening, things might change for the better,
So one thing to add to that too, self-reflection and self-analyzation is something that doesn't happen. Why does that not happen anymore? Well, did it happen before? Maybe before I start blaming our current situation. Is that self-reflection, was that happening for our parents and our parents, or were there other external control factors that made it seem like everything was happening?
I think it's a personality thing because I've come across people who go through the whole self-reflection thing, and then there are people who are completely oblivious to who they are. So someone who's a little bit more self-aware probably will do some self-reflection. But then there's other people who is like, how is it that you don't see what I see? You got work to do.
Yeah.
But, that's what I think it is, just a personality thing. Some got it, some don't.
But I also think that because of the whole wave of just mental health, energies, vibes, chakras,
We're becoming more aware.
freaking crystals, scents, candles, like that is the wave right now. Like it's off the chain. So I think that more people are understanding that the reflection needs to happen because it's in all that realm, right? But you have to be exposed to it. Like you have to, like your environment has to be exposed to it. You know what I'm saying? You might want to get you a nice little Erykah Badu if you're a guy and you ain't getting your chakras right. You know what I mean? So
or Eric Badu for
Eric Badu for the women,
or the men,
or the men, or whoever your preference is, right? So, but I think that with it being such a big thing, like people are talking about it all the time, right? I think that more people are reflecting now, to go back to what Styles was asking, now than they were before.
Right.
Because like the 70s, they was doing coke. Who got time to reflect?
LSD.
they were not on these lines real quick.
Yeah.
Right, man. They was having a ball over there.
Yeah.
Don't do coke. But I'm like...
unless that's your thing, then if you do... I mean, we're trying to say right now, Pepsi sponsor us. That's all we're saying.
Right.
That's all we're saying. Anyway.
If you're out there doing that coke, can I get an invite?
To the cola. To the cola.
All right. We're like, what?
The cola.
Yeah. I will not be there.
Anywho.
I won't go to anything anyway, though.
But yeah, no. I mean, communication, man. Communication, self-reflection. Honestly, I feel like we're in a space where people don't even stop to look at themselves. It's always externally motivated. I think to your point, MVP, I don't know if we're fully in the space where people are paying attention to mental health. I think it's more, we're talking about it more. I don't know if people are paying attention to it as much as they should because they still have the stigmas, that are attributed to it. It's like, people still you talk to a therapist? I'm like, yeah, you go to a doctor, right? And some people feel like it's weird. And I'm like, why? Right? Like, it's why. You're talking to somebody about your inner thoughts that, to your initial intro, your deepest, darkest secrets. You might not tell anybody that. I'm not telling everybody how I, at some point imagine pushing somebody down the stairs. I'm not going to tell them that.
First thing that came to mind was like smacking fire out of someone, I think you said.
like
reference earlier.
You might not want to tell everybody that because some people might think it's real, right? And
you gotta watch what you're saying.
But if you have somebody that you're paying to listen to you and literally, going through the reasons
Therapy.
why you look at things, to me it's a good look. So, but at the same token, there are a lot of shitty therapists out there, so you got to find you a good one, which is challenging.
Well, if therapy is something that like is just you're not familiar with and you might be hesitant with, I also recommend leaning on your friends. Like one of the things I do now that I have no problem expressing myself. Remember when I was younger, issues, right? But now I'm like, yo, I might even get a little I'm like, yo, bro, if you ever need to talk, man, I am here. Like, I'd rather you talk to me than go shoot up a Walmart or a movie theater. Like, I am that person for you. If you need that person, I don't know if people have that conversation, especially guys too. But I'll be the first one like, yo, please, if you don't talk to me, I'm gonna be mad when you make a decision. Cause me and my fellas, we have like, group conversations to really understand. Cause you can't. The mind is so complicated, bro. You can't just have all your thoughts just in your head.
Yeah, man.
Cause it might be like, you know what I'm saying, I have a homie, he might be like, yo, this might be a little dark. Thank you for letting me know, giving me the disclaimer. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then I'm like, there's no judgment there. It's just like, hey, yeah, bro, that's a little dark. You're gonna have to get some healing energies into you. You probably should move this way. But I feel like some people just, they don't want to go to therapy. They don't want to talk to their friends or reach out or be vulnerable. And that's the thing. You have to find those people in life, though. Like, that was, if you take anything from Juxtaposed, I would say, hey, start thinking about these things. Start thinking about, can you have these conversations with your mans? Can you have these conversations with your homegirls or whatever? Even if it could be your partner, right? Because there's some partners that be like, man, I ain't trying to hear all that.
Yeah, for sure.
Dog, walk it off or stop crying. Or do you have that partner that's like, well, and it might not have nothing to do with that partner. It could be you're having issues with something else and the partner just don't want to hear it. Or you have a partner who's like, hey, I'm seeing you just getting pissed off with everything. Like, yo, what's up? I know it's not me, but like, what is it? Do you want to talk? Like, and kind of don't be annoying, but put the pressure on them and be like, yo, like, hey, just checking in. You good? The check-in is very important, I think. Yeah. Especially nowadays. People are doing some wild stuff, and I think they don't have people to express their deepest, darkest thoughts with.
But then, my one follow-up to that is, do you always feel comfortable to share your deepest, darkest thoughts with people? Because I don't necessarily share all my deepest, darkest thoughts with y'all, and I talk to MVP every day.
Right.
So, I mean, I give you a lot of credit to check in and let me know if you're good type, because that's something you really, sometimes you feel like you don't necessarily have some of the same experiences. And that's one thing that the brain does to you. You would tell you, hey, you're the only person in the whole goddamn world that feels this way. And when you start talking to people, you realize, there's not that many different experiences happening.
Right.
And I think that was, that's something to also call out. Somebody out there somewhere in the world is going through exactly what you're going through. So don't miss out on the opportunity to create that community and maybe create a deeper bond around that. So, that's something to keep in mind. This is a long one. I don't know if we have anything else to add, but or we could wrap it up, because I think we got so much.
Yeah,
I think we can wrap it up, but like it's one of those topics where it could be a part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
No, I was just saying that I think we touched on many areas in regards to it, but I do think that what I'm getting from it, listening to you guys, is the inner voice, your need to be heard, can definitely be expressed, but it's about how, where, and to whom. Don't just expect that everything that you think, feel, and say will be received the same by everyone. So that freedom of expression, that freedom to speak is there, as it should always be. You just have to be cognizant of where you're letting that freedom of expression or speech happen. And once you get that all dialed in, I think you should be okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, as usual, this has been a fun conversation. Shout out to everybody that made it this far. If you made it this far, man, I support you.
You're the MVP.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So we are going to call this a day. I don't know why I started talking slow there. But thank everybody for tuning in. This has been another episode of Juxtaposed. Peace.